Urban Procurement Commission. This morning, our esteemed chair, Phil Andrews, had a last-minute appearance in the Court of Appeals, and while he may join us later, he asked Peter Richkes to chair the meeting today. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter, and thank you, Peter, for taking on this role for us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Liz, and good morning, everybody. First item on the agenda is the approval of the January minutes. I believe everybody received an email and they were also loaded onto the commission webpage. Are there any comments or corrections for the minutes for January? Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you so much. A second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Great, thank you so much. The first part of our meeting includes several presentations. Rob, I think you're up first for Workday.
Yes, ma'am. So it'll be Bob Preston from the Deputy Director of OBF, Rose Butler, Chief of Procurement, and myself. So, Bob, are you going to present and drive?
I'm trying to. I'm allowed to share a file and a whiteboard, but not a screen, not a window. So maybe my presentation capabilities are not as what we think. Well, that's not what we want to do.
Again, that's going to be another setting. Who's hosting? Can you? It's restricting what we can share.
It's myself. I have everyone panelists should be able to share a document.
Yeah, you need to share screen.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just a moment.
Thanks, Jasmine.
Thank you. There we go.
And would you please make sure that the documents, that the slides are shared with the commission members?
We will.
Absolutely.
I found it helpful to get them ahead of time so that I could print them out because my screen view isn't all that large.
Oh. Okay, yeah, I think we need to make another note of, well, they were in some calendar invites, but we may have to put that in process next time.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Rob, you can start.
Rose, I think you were going to kick us off.
Oh, Rose, you were going to kick us off. Yes. At least with the title.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So the first presentation to kick off today is the procurement system replacement. And we're just going to kind of dive into a little bit this new Workday ERP system that we've been talking about for some previous meetings. And the whole point of this is to kind of give you a snap view into, the system and why why the county made a decision to upgrade or find another ERP system, and how it's going to tie in with the county executive transparency platform, as well as, help us build on efficiency countywide. So, Bob, I think you are driving the PowerPoint. Could you move to the next slide, please? All right. So again, as I just mentioned, the whole vision of this new ERP system definitely is to bring Baltimore County up to date with its technologies and efficiency, and also allow us the capability to have transparent data, access to, reporting platforms that we currently don't have available in our current system. And also, Workday is a platform or ERP system that's also used with other jurisdiction. So it definitely, kind of closes the gap in, connecting us with other, governmental jurisdictions that use the same system. But it's a modernized system, built for transparency, built for able to collect data and reporting so that we're able to make better decisions for the county. Bob, can you go to the next slide?
Okay.
All right. Rob, you want to jump
Yep.
in?
Yeah, thanks, Rose. So the Office of Information Technology has identified multiple enterprise systems over the past 4 years that, basically support the pillars of whether it's our financial system, public safety system, public health system, public works systems that we're in need of replacement. Obviously, local government is constrained to whether the resource is people or money in timing to replace legacy systems. Fortunately, we have a new administration that is driving transparency and understands the need for technology to be coherent across the entire enterprise in order to create efficiencies and transparency. So the ERP system was one that we've been working on for about 3 to 4 years, and the selection committee was going through rigorous demos. We had a full-blown RFP and a competitive process, obviously, in that selection. However, the mentality going into these selections was based upon the fact that we needed to be buying best of breed. We needed to stop doing homegrown configured systems, homegrown, what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, not configured, Bob.
Out of the box.
Customized. No, sorry, homegrown customized systems. Yeah, customized systems. Yep, and move to best of breed. So the number of opportunities that we're looking for to enhance were obviously through the technology. And the county was maintaining a last century ERP system. That is true. The system that we are currently running right now was selected in the late 90s. It has been through multiple upgrades. It is not really a 20-year-old system, but the technology and the platform itself that it was based upon is a 20-year-old mentality. So it lacks the functionality and it lacks the ease of support that a large enterprise such as Baltimore County needs from its ERP system. So we decided that it was time to move to
Excuse me for just a second.
Sure.
Rob. Could you refresh my memory? What does ERP stand for?
Oh, Enterprise Resource Platform. Is that correct, Bob?
Program, but yes.
Program. Thank you.
Or planning. Planning is the other word.
Okay. It's your financial system. It's typically your HR and your financial procurement systems is your ERP system. So what happened is with our legacy system and not having the full-blown functionality that agencies were needing when it came to reporting and for self-management of individual resources, they started to do what we would call shadow IT. Basically, they were extracting data from our ERP system, creating access databases and other workarounds for their own reporting. So that was one of the things that we were beginning to notice, and we realized that it was time to move forward faster. Operational efficiencies and data integrity are always key for us. So we have numerous, they're called HCM, but HR, payroll, and financial processes that rely currently on paper forms, and I mean in the sense of hundreds of paper forms. There are weekly and daily manual keying of data, for example, time entry, and multiple systems which create data gaps, data inconsistency, and integrity concerns. So as you have an enterprise system that we have role or procurement that is entered into, and agencies are scraping this data and then utilizing it in their own reporting, any type of error could then create discrepancies in that data. The third pillar would be effective reporting. Concerns about the validity of that data being reported can create challenges with producing reports that help drive effective decision making for the county, as well as ensuring compliance. This was quickly realized by the new administration when they came in and they were being presented with seriously Excel format reports that were hard to understand and hard to digest in the sense of where the county stood from a procurement or from a financial standpoint. Procurement management, manual processes and disparate systems that prevent the county from relevantly viewing our procurement practices and effectively meeting the goals of the county and external stakeholders. So again, if we're not collecting the right type of data and we don't have the right type of workflows, it is not something for us to easily measure to make sure that we are being held accountable for each of those goals that should be met by the county through different forms. Next slide, please. So what are we doing? We're implementing a new highly usable and effective system to support all the Baltimore County government's HR and procurement needs. Next slide. Okay, so Bob, I'm gonna let you complete the slide for me and then I'll just talk through it. He's gonna build this out for us. Okay, so you'll see the one thing that came up on the end here, and I know it sounds like it's a little bit of sarcasm, but this was actually an actual quote that came from discovery sessions from our end users, is that our ERP system has become a 4-letter word. It became to a point where it was cumbersome for employees to actually do their job. We are able to function under the current ERP system, but not effectively. Again, we talked about we have disparate systems. Having disparate systems producing information becomes a heavy lift. A lot of times, agencies that are just in the need of reports need to turn back to OIT to create these reports, where it should be agency-based or end-user-based to be able to collect that data and report on that data easily. Ad hoc information can take days or weeks to obtain, when sometimes you're looking for an immediate business decision that day. Difficult to complete the picture of an employee. So the other issue that we had is our current system was not doing employee tracking in the sense of their progression for career growth, and also easily being able to ascertain previous employment evaluations. And agencies were then building workarounds for each of these needs. I alluded to earlier, there became a very heavy technology support that is still required through our ERP system. Current applications sometimes require workarounds. Information becomes fragmented and unreliable, and employee processes become cumbersome and lengthy. So typically what happens is we're getting large amounts of requests from agencies for, again, like I said, reports or other types of information. And as you can imagine, our IT department is a lot of times overwhelmed, and we realize that there are better tools and products out there to put these necessities in the hands of our end users.
Hey, Bob, can I just interject here? Because
Yeah.
as a customer of this, and knowing that the commissioners have asked over the last 2 meetings for certain data sets, some of it will come forward in next month's meeting. But even the data team, who is ready to analyze the information that Rose's team has, it has taken us several steps just to get access. And I think it just, for the purposes of the commission asks, knowing we have it and we have people to analyze it, but getting it has been more steps than we've gotten there. We're getting it, but it's no one's fault. It's just the way our current system is as cumbersome, as I think Rob has just been describing. So, little anecdote.
Oh, can you get back, Bob?
Yep, I'm sorry, just.
That's all good. All good. No, so you kind of just hit the nail on the head there too, Elizabeth. Limited enablement. So again, Elizabeth's team is unable to self-service. There's limited capability for them to do what they need. There are no mobile capabilities, so end users can't view their time, submit their time, or report their time in an HR capacity. Business needs are outgrowing the current system. So the other big piece is that we mentioned earlier is the relational architecture. People are starting to create Excel spreadsheets. We're concerned about compliance. And then the biggest piece too, that you guys are probably most concerned about as you look at the data, is making sure the verification of the data is accurate, but it's also becoming time consuming. That's what Elizabeth was just talking about. These are things that we typically wish we could turn around in 30 minutes for you through a dashboard. But unfortunately right now it requires analysts and data architects to scrape data from databases. Next slide. Please. Thank you. So where we're going, integrity. Obviously, this is a multi-million-dollar investment and takes tons of resources and tons of time. So we selected a system that we can rely on. Excellence, a system that allows us to manage our procurement needs and provide superior service to our residents. Equity, support our inclusive decision-making process, and in doing that in an analytical standpoint. Transparency, a system that allows all stakeholders accurate information in a consistent and timely manner. Accountability, measure our outcomes and share our results. Sustainability, effectively and timely management of our resources to meet the changing needs of our county. As everyone can imagine, the more cumbersome an enterprise system is, there's a line in county government that we're not a speedboat, that we're an aircraft carrier, and that's because of the tools that unfortunately sometimes we have. And it's impossible for us to turn on a dime when sometimes the needs arise for us to be able to turn on a dime. Next slide, please. End game, provide a user-friendly system that helps the county accomplish their jobs more easily and effectively. Highly important, provide flexible reporting tools that better meet county and individual reporting needs. minimize manual processes and manual integration so staff can maximize their time devoted to value-added activities. Place Baltimore County within rich communities of practice to ensure good processes and procedures and an available and quality vendor experience. Next slide. Okay, so why Workday? Why do we select Workday? Workday is currently the top selected ERP system by Fortune 500 companies. Again, county government should be no different than any private sector, and we should be using best of breed solutions. This is a single unified system that meets we'll fix that before we send it out, meets our needs, and now will grow with us. It's a modern and responsive interface. It has out-of-the-box integrations. It requires little to no IT programming or customization in this product at all. This is a hosted system with stronger security measures than local state governments can afford to maintain. Sometimes a lot of questions come around procurement of why the county or why the state and county governments pay additional funds to have systems hosted and not keep them on premise. Depending on the type of system and the type of data and information, it is actually less costly when you look at soft dollar costs, which is man hours, and then also security integrations that need to be put in place to protect these systems. Large hosting environments obviously can maintain better security levels than we can because they invest billions of dollars into their data centers. Readily available information on any device. This new system will allow every end user and every employee to access securely the information, whether it's from a mobile phone, their laptop, or obviously their county desktop or laptop. There are over 200 vendor products targeting efficiency and cost savings built into Workday. And of course, one of the things that sold us on Workday was the reporting capabilities. We sat through many demos, and I think many people here who have sat through vendor demos sometimes feel they're being put through a smoke and mirror because they knew what they were, the end user was looking for. Workday actually came in with a blank canvas, asked us what report we were looking for, and drove through step by step very quickly and very easily that every one of our end users that was in a demo was basically saying, oh, I can do that. So that was another huge advantage moving to Workday. Next slide, please. So Workday customers, Workday they're growing up to, I think, nearly 4,000 enterprise customers at this point in time. The reason this slide means so much to me, being an IT person, is there's two major companies that you will see here that utilize Workday, and that is Google and Amazon. And anyone who understands the breadth of what Google and Amazon can do on their own knows that if they did feel like Workday was the right solution for them, they could build their own ERP system. So, again, there's no reason that local governments, state governments, and even the federal government aren't doing the same as large enterprise when it comes to selecting best of breed solutions. Next slide, please. And Rose.
Yay, my turn again. Thank you. So just picking up talking about reporting requirements, which Rob had previously mentioned was one of the, important or high topics on choosing Workday. And in the procurement world, this is so very, very important to us. As Elizabeth mentioned before, there are reports and data that this Blue Ribbon Commission is asking for, and either either we have to pull several reports and scrub the data and then put it into some sort of Excel spreadsheets and make it, sound or give you what you need, or either the information is just not there. So when we talk about Workday and talk about reporting, there's two, areas that's super important. That's the procurement data cycle and the vendor demographic cycle. So with the procurement data cycle, we need to be able to find a better way to pull reports to let us know what we're buying. And this is, helpful for us looking for different trends or looking for those bulk purchases, or maybe comparing it with some of our cooperative partners through our BrickPack committee and seeing if we can put two agencies together to get better pricing. Who is bidding? Again, this is tying into the prime contract is also tying into Carla's world with the MBE WBE program. We are able to assess and figure out and easily identify where we may have some discrepancies in the vendors that we're purchasing for. Who are we buying from? Again, kind of sort of like what we mentioned before, again, is who we buying from, who are we, relying on, who is getting most of the county dollars, and trying to figure out a way how we can kind of spread and, spread the wealth of county dollars. How are we buying it? Looking at our different procurement measures and then having some sort of reporting capabilities to determine whether it is beneficial to do our own solicitation, or is it beneficial for us to piggyback or do cooperative? We need to be able to pull, that information, and most importantly, we always want to make sure that our pricing is fair and reasonable. So being able to pull reports over a certain time period to kind of show the trends between maybe the increasing of pricing or the decreasing of pricing is very important to us in order to make sure that we're doing our best to meet the mission of the procurement department. Vendor demographics, we're able to pull this information, the size, competition, location when it comes to preference, clauses, ownership, standing, or good standing is what that's supposed to be, is if the vendor is in good standing with the state of Maryland assessment and taxation. All of these things play in a super important part with us actually reviewing and just making sure that we are handling procurement process at the highest integrity possible, and as well as meeting those MBE, WBE subcontractable goals. Next slide, Bob, please. I think this is you, Bob.
It is. This is where we transition.
Yes.
Well, good morning, everybody. So we wanted to show you just a little bit about Workday. We're in the middle of the implementation, and a lot of Workday is built around process. So what data do we need to collect? Let's see how we get it in as early as possible to make all those rate reports become easy to do, all those dashboards and everything else. But in saying that, it also tries to be very user friendly. It is focused on that, making it available to anyone who uses it to be very simple. It gives you a list of to-dos to do every morning if you have them. It'll give you dashboards to let you know what you want to look at, what you need to know. And if you look at the welcome screen, you can see that it's very centric. That if you have a smartphone, very same type of cube icons looking on it. So that makes it easier to learn and transition to, as opposed to a line of a lot of reading, green screens. It's very much like using Google and Amazon. So one of the things we wanted to show is some of the reporting capabilities that were there, and some of the other functions that we have. And just to give you a sample picture of them, this is a set of dashboards that the procurement office would be using, or any manager in a department or senior management when they look at the whole campus. Obviously, their security will look at it from however their view is, whether it's the entire county or just their agency. And these reports are very easy to do. These are ones that just actually come with it, but you can, every user can turn a graph into a chart if that's how they're rather look at it. And it's simply a button up in the upper right-hand corner of the window. If they want to view more, they literally double-click on any of the columns or pie charts or anything else, and they can drill down into more detailed data that makes it up. And they keep drilling until they get to the eventual actual transaction associated with it. That's different than the reporting we do now. As you heard both Rob and Rose talk, we scrape data, we filter it, we clean it up, we put it together in a spreadsheet, then we maybe put it in a graph or a chart, and it could take up to several weeks. And we hand it to somebody to look at, and they go, I'd rather have a chart, or I'd rather have it this way. And then we start the cycle all over again, where this is looking at reporting in the system that has all the data. We can easily change the chart. We can easily add more things to it or take things out. And it's looking at the real data in real time. And we can also look at time slices and other things. We have, besides being able to look at just what we're purchasing, we can also look at the types of vendors and also maybe their MBE status. That's a delivered report. MBE, vendor size, and types of goods and services they're buying. So there's lots of data that we can pull, and this allows us to make better decisions for how to make sure that our procurement system is actually doing what we want the most efficient way and not just what we think it's doing. And here's another simple graph and something that shows up on anybody. It's actually very interesting because it actually shows the entire procurement cycle in a simple chart. We can actually see requisitions in process, the ones that are canceled, ones that are approved, and then whether they've actually gone all the way to matching. And we can do that for a range for agency, a time frame, or just look at it en masse. And that allows us to basically look at where the holdup is. You know, if they aren't all approved and they're sitting in progress, and that column starts getting large, we can start looking at that and seeing who's holding up the process. Internally, that's a big complaint that we have, that somebody's sitting on some part of a requisition or a PO, and a lot of times they find out it's sitting on their own desk, but because it's paper, they don't always know that. This way you can see it online and actually see where it is. And you can answer that question without phone calls or embarrassment for having to write back and saying it's on your desk. This system also allows for a lot of self-service. So not only you don't have to call procurement, whether you're a vendor or a purchaser. So on both sides, we have a portal for the front end for vendors, and we have a whole set of selections for processing tasks for the agencies. And so there's, it makes it very user-friendly. Help is online and built in. And again, all real time. To give you an idea of the time frame, and this is somewhat limited because it only talks about the initial deployment. We actually will be doing, let me go through this. We're sitting now in February of 21, so we're right through the architecture, starting to working on configure and prototype. What looks like a very long period of testing in milestone 4, that is because there is a lot of testing, and we may have to go back and reconfigure and reprototype and cycle through. The intent at Workday, which is our partner, and some of the things that we wanted to do was to make sure that we had a fully tested system. Setting up is relatively simple compared to all the rigorous amount of testing that we're going to be doing, including parallel payroll testing, great deal of testing with the procurement process from both user acceptance and both internal and external. And then we'll have our first deployment in January of 22. However, then we will go to phase 2, which will go out at the end of that fiscal year in July 1 of 22. And then we'll have several other phases. Plus, Workday is a growing system. In the current system, I think the last major update of the feature was 7 or 8 years ago. Rob could actually might be better at remembering that. Whereas Workday has 2 deployments every year that are functional changes. Things are growing, adding new functionality, things are made simpler, and it's built on a single platform. So everything works the same. So if you want to request to hire a person or make a requisition for goods and services, the business process is relatively the same. There might be different approvals and configuration, but the way it looks at data is very consistent because it's built from ground up, and that's a big advantage to us. That gives you a little bit of a snapshot of what Workday does, some of the functionality that we have. We are still in the middle of the implementation process. As we get further along and as we hear from you all about things that we need to be watching better or looking at more, you can either confirm that if we already have that on our list, or we can add it to it if it's something we didn't think about. That's very important because that helps us build a better system, and then let us grow with that system as we go out. That is the end of the presentation, and Rose, Rob, and I would be glad to take any questions anybody has.
Great. Thank you so much, Rose and Rob and Bob. Any questions?
So I'm curious to know who
Thank you, Sharon.
are the vendors that are that you purchased the Workday from, and then who are the vendors that are implementing this, and then what MBWB goals have been met or will be met in this process?
meaning is that with the specifically to the purchase of Workday. Robert Rose?
So, I mean, the vendor we purchase it from is, I think is actually, the name is actually Workday, right, Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, so Workday,
Okay.
Workday product is purchased directly through Workday,
Workday,
and the
okay.
implementer is actually Workday.
Workday.
And then the contract it was boilerplate county language. I don't have it at hand. I don't know if it was the 15% MBE requirement that
Yeah.
we met.
I can check on that,
We will.
Ms. Dixon, and get that to you so I can be accurate in that percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thanks again for that presentation. I know that employees must be really excited about this. This move was actually recommended by the Commission on Fiscal Sustainability. So I know it's long been desired and long been in planning. And if you've ever tried, if you or anyone, any of the commissioners have ever tried to look at the master contract spreadsheet and scroll through to find information that you may be looking for, you know how badly this is needed.
I do have one question real quick. Sorry.
No.
Is there a desire, or does Workday have a module for capital budget activities or no?
I can answer that. We do have a capital budgeting system. Actually, it's part of our budgeting system that's part of Workday. And we have a project cost accounting system that is going in the second phase. So it'll go live in July. So we are working with people across the street from us and others to make sure that we have all their needs, and including their commodity codes and their phases that they need when we do the project portion of that project, project costing portion of the project.
Gotcha. So it will be included in a future
Yes.
phase. Gotcha.
Yes, and actually, Steve, because you were actually still here at Baltimore County when we began the CityWorks implementation, there will be direct integration between Workday and the CityWorks asset management piece of that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
So this is Scott Phillips. I have a couple of questions. As we're implementing Workday, I know a number of jurisdictions have had some challenges. Our friends just inside of our border are having some challenges that are affecting personnel, pay, purchasing, etc. Are we learning from those? Is there any communication with some of our local jurisdictions that may have had more of a challenge implementing this?
Scott, this is Ed Blades. If I could chime in, I would say absolutely 100%. Baltimore City is on our radar, and we've noticed, and we are well aware of the payroll challenges that they're having, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that we do not have those issues when we go live.
Okay, all right. And how much of this, I know Workday does the implementation, but my experience is they do sub out quite a bit of the manpower. Are they providing their own resources on our project, or kind of what's the mix between subcontractors and Workday personnel?
It's Bob, and if you don't mind, any of us can take it. These are all direct Workday employees.
Okay.
There were integrators that we were, Scott, that were available for us to look at. As we talked to other jurisdictions, on the things that we looked for was the accuracy of the implementation itself, the expertise of the team within the implementation, and the cost. And the other big piece for this administration was the timeliness of getting this implemented. Doing it directly through Workday met those marks better than doing a third-party integrator. So these are all direct Workday employees.
Okay.
With
so
obviously a large amount of Baltimore County staff resources also working the project.
And I can give you a little bit of insight in that this is not my first Workday implementation. And it usually, once Workday knows they have good, trusted subs, they do let them do the implementation or become your implementation partner. However, Workday does like to keep a few internal that are very important to them, and generally those staff that do those implementations also do their quality control on other clients. So that's an advantage to us, and we'll see how that works as we go through the project.
Any other questions?
How much is the system? What's the cost of this system?
So we can get the exact figures for you. There are maintenance costs because it is a hosted system. There are licensing costs, and then there was implementation costs. For me to grab the numbers just right out of the air would not be fair. That's something that we can easily turn around for you probably in less than 48 hours, Ms. Dixon, because we have all that within the contract. It is expanding over 2 fiscal years. This is not a small endeavor or small purchase. This was looked at by the executive and administration and including the council as, you know, the investment versus the outcome. So we will get you those figures immediately.
And I know in Bob's presentation, he mentioned, you know, some input that the commission might have. So one of the reasons we did this presentation this month as opposed to 3 months out is in the coming meetings and interim, if you all have ideas or questions about could the system do this or that, now is definitely the time to share that with Rose and Rob and Bob.
Great. Thank you very much. Very informative. The Department of Public Works presentation is up next. Jeff, are you leading that?
Yeah, I'll be driving the slides for him.
Okay.
So I'll share that.
Thanks, Jasmine. All right. Oh, good morning, Chairman Rich Giss and members of the Commission. I am Jeff Peluso, and I'm the Acting Bureau Chief of Engineering and Construction. And I have Karen McCormick on the line, and she will be co-presenting with me. And she's a program manager in the Division of Construction Contracts Administration. So she's gonna go over the construction side, and I'll take care of the engineering side. So moving forward, so what does DPW procure? Well, they do a lot. We procure lots of things, vehicles and equipment, road salt, which we're probably using today, I'm sure. And construction materials. So our Bureau of Utilities needs pumps and instrumentation to maintain our pumping stations, inlets, manholes, frames and covers, so forth. Road signals and signs and solid waste equipment, excavators and such, loaders for out at the landfills. We procure contractors that do the resurfacing and curb and gutters and sidewalks throughout the county. Consultants that do a number of engineering design projects, and contractors that that build those designs. Next slide. So how do we procure these things? So I kind of broke it down into 3 basic areas. Purchasing, which Rose covers a lot of this in her presentation, as well as her previous presentations. On the consultant side, there's a qualification-based selection known as PSSC. And then on the construction side, competitive low bids for construction contracts. So, next slide, please. So our focus today really is on the qualification-based consultant selections, professional services. So those are the engineers, engineering consultants that we hire for our design work, and the competitive low bid process that Karen will be covering through our construction contracts division. So a lot of our capital budget is spent between these 2 items. We also procure consultants and capital projects for solid waste and Department of Environmental Protection, and sustainability, traffic engineering, property management. Obviously, these are very important procurement mechanisms for the department and property management. Next slide, please. So let's start with looking at professional services. So the Architect Engineer Professional Services Selection Executive Order was established in February 28th of 1975, and it's been amended several times, with the last amendment being in, I believe, 2010. The order is the governing document for the selection of professional services for projects that are supported wholly or in part by public funds. In that document, professional services are defined by those services within the scope of practices of architecture, landscape architecture, and engineering. Next slide, please. So before we get to selecting our consultants, we have a pre-qualification process. So every firm, whether they're prime, a sub-consultant, a joint venture, in these applicable disciplines, and that's, like I said, engineering, architecture, and landscape architecture, must be pre-qualified to submit a response to our solicitations. They're called an RFQU. The instructions are on the county's website, and what they entail are there's a 254 form, which is a standard federal form that they have to fill out, a 101 form, and this is all documented and spelled out on that link. And then on that 101 form, they list the controlling partners or responsible individuals, I think they're called. And those are the ones that are licensed or have to be licensed and may sign off on plans and such. And so we also ask for a copy of their licenses, and obviously they have to be current. Moving on, those consultants have to submit these forms annually. So we have a cycle for this pre-qualification between August 1st and July 31st. And all firms, and this is a real hard have to have it, must be pre-qualified as of the date of the solicitation. So there was a time, I believe it was 2 years ago, where the due date for the solicitation was, the advertisement was before the cycle, but the due date was after the cycle. So that created a little bit of problems, I think with one or two firms where they did not put in their paperwork again for that cycle starting August 1st. It was just a little bit of an issue. Next slide, please. So moving on to the actual solicitation for professional services. So we ask the contracting agency to give us a scope of services, contract value, the duration of the contract, and then maybe how many firms they're looking for. We also, after that, we present the scope of services to the PRG, which is the Procurement Review Group, and I believe that's been mentioned in past presentations. And that's where tiering requirements are discussed and where there may be opportunity to tier. We sometimes discuss MBE and WBE goals at that point, but typically our consultant contracts are 20% of MBE, WBE goals. So from there, once we have the tiering, the scope of services, we create the solicitation, and in that solicitation, there's a number of, it's pretty much put into a template where we have a scope of services, we have the schedule. There's a clause in there about intended use where we rotate the work between numerous, whether there's 3 or 4 consultants selected, we would rotate the work between them. there's also a pre-qualification reminder in that solicitation. There's a checklist. We try to make it so that no one forgets anything. We want to get as much competition as possible.
Excuse me, Jeff, could you explain tiering? You've mentioned tiering requirements. What does tiering refer to?
So it was a newer, I guess, I wouldn't call it a process, but it was introduced, I believe, in 2017 when there was our executive signed an order to help small businesses. So tiering is created because our contracts generally are multi-million-dollar contracts. So what tiering would do is create maybe like $1 million contract and then maybe a $3 or $4 million contract. So it would allow a small business to perhaps compete and get a contract because they, wouldn't be able to compete maybe against some of the bigger firms. I see Carla's finger up. So that was sort of the intent of tiering, is to allow for a smaller business to get a contract with us. So Carla, if you want to add anything to that.
Just wanted to add that Baltimore County did not have, this was our version of what the state would call a small business reserve program. We did not have a small business program, so we implemented a tiering program on solicitations the intent was for on-call contracts to open up opportunities for small businesses. However, it does not require certification. So not really achieving what we thought it would. I just wanted to make that note there.
And I'll add to,
other than in the architecture and engineering side.
I'll add to Carla's, it being somewhat unsuccessful in the fact that there were, although the intent was for smaller firms to have the ability to compete, we couldn't preclude larger firms in competing in that tier one, say. So we had larger firms in that tier one, and it sometimes it was successful, sometimes it wasn't. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was 100% for sure.
So Carla,
are you
and
saying
Jeff,
that?
what do you, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know, Madam Mayor, I'll let you go first. I'm some
Well,
deference
I
here.
guess, well, I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions after this is over because there's so many complaints that we get with DPW and Baltimore County. So I guess what you're saying is that this tier was set up for small companies, but the larger companies have taken advantage of it. And so a lot of smaller companies haven't benefited from this. So if that was the goal, why would you allow the larger companies to even participate in the tier program, particularly if you're trying to particularly if you're trying to attract smaller companies who can't do the larger contracts?
Can I jump into that question, Madam Mayor, for just a second? Because I want to, mine was similar, but Carl and Jeff, can you tell me what you would need in order to make it a small business reserve and focus on the minority business community? What would you need?
So the requirement to limit tier one to certified small businesses. However, actually have submitted a recommendation to revitalize that program and do a program similar to the state of Maryland Small Business Reserve for that designation, so that the tier ones or we can actually identify specific procurements up to a certain dollar threshold to be reserved for small businesses, but it hasn't been approved as of yet. So that's why we don't do it on public works construction contracts anymore. We stopped on that area. In that area, what was happening was on the tier one projects, again, as Jeff mentioned, the larger firms were competing. The ones that were familiar with the county's procurement process, they knew what dollar size some of those procurements might be. So they would bid on tier 1, but in construction, tier 2 had MBE goals because of the larger dollar value, and they weren't competing on a tier 2. So we stopped it so that we would not participate in discriminatory practices as a passive participant. In the architecture and engineering side, regardless of the tier, MBE, WBE requirements apply in both tiers because the dollar threshold is above the $25,000 threshold. So we can continue to do the tiering and have the MBE goals on both tiers. So we still continue to do it where we can. So if we could limit tier 1 to certified firms, that would actually assist.
So
Is
Carl,
that
are you
something that could
saying
be?
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Are you saying that the tier program that it's stopped now, that based on the dollar threshold, even with the small reserve, you didn't have to meet MBE requirements?
You didn't have to meet MBE, you didn't have to meet SBA's Hub Zone or 8A, you didn't have to meet any of that. In the way the program is existing today, that will require an executive order by the county to be able to limit those procurements to certified entities. So that's why it's not in place. We didn't have an executive order to do that. So
and when did it stop?
We stopped the practice when we realized that the firms that were bidding were not bidding on in the construction arena. I have to specify in the construction arena. We stopped the practice as soon as we realized that the contractors were not bidding on tier 2 because tier 2 is where the MBE goals applied. So I want to say it was probably probably in 2018 because it started July 2017. And I would say maybe somewhere in early 2018 where we stopped when we realized what was happening because it started happening right out the gate. But we had to wait for procurement to expire to actually put it in the solicitation. So we didn't modify an existing contract. We applied it as contracts expired. And when we saw that it was happening in the contracts as we were recompeting them, we stopped the process, stopped that practice with the exception of architecture and engineering because it's MBE applies in both tiers.
So just to add to Carla's statement, so we continue to use tiering where possible. And that's discussed and determined in the PRG. And I guess until we have a better program in place, which Carla is working on currently, we continue to use it in this area here where I'm talking about in professional services.
Excuse me, Jeff, Elizabeth, I'm a little concerned about our schedule for today. And I see that Jeff and
Karen,
thank you, have quite a few slides to go through, and yet we still have other presentations and business. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, there's some housekeeping items at the very end that don't really need to take much time. It was mostly my time, so I'm more than willing to yield that. I think this,
great.
I'm sure you agree, this conversation is very helpful.
Absolutely.
And I think I'm looking at the schedule. I think that I think we can take this. We can keep going, but by 11:30 we should get to number 4. So we can buy back 20 minutes.
Okay, great. Because the questions are very important, and obviously there are a lot of questions about the subject area. Okay, so
Peter,
Jeff
can I
and
ask a
Karen.
question?
Yeah, oh, sure.
The question, and I think you may have answered it, Carla. Can all of this be done, what you need, can it all be done via executive order?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
All right, go move forward. Yep. Well, I'll try to go quick.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, so the next steps, once we have this solicitation together, we advertise it. And this goes on the county's website and eMaryland Marketplace. We generally allow about 4 weeks from the time it's posted on the website to the due date. And in the solicitation and on the website, we encourage all people to subscribe to the county's email app, notification app of projects that are advertised. And any time a consultant approaches me, that's the first thing out of my mouth is to, are you part of the email notification? Because that's really important. So moving forward, we pre-COVID, we would require 2 hard copies to be delivered on the due date. Well, since COVID and the offices were closed, and we did actually have some advertisements that were due just past when COVID sort of hit in March, we switched to an electronic submission, and it's been working actually fairly well. Next
Jeff,
slide.
I'm going to jump in again because I have a question in this arena.
Sure.
There's still on the books a requirement for print notification via the Jeffersonian. And I haven't been able to determine that the Jeffersonian is even active any longer, or that the print notification is still in practice. Can you clarify?
It is not in practice.
Okay, that answers. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So once the solicitation goes out and the due date comes around, we generally receive most of the proposals the day of the due date, and they're received. And of course, when I was talking about COVID and electronic submissions, so we receive them via email, and then we send an acknowledgement email back saying that it was received and a date for which it was received. Prior to COVID, when those hard copies would come in, we would date stamp and give the person that's delivering those copies a hard copy acknowledging that we received the submittal. So once we have those, the due date passes and we have all the proposals in, we do sort of an initial review of each proposal, just to really verify that all the forms are there, they're signed. The consultants, the sub-consultants are pre-qualified. And this actually can take a fairly long time because we can get 20 to 35 submissions for a project. And I see Carla's shaking her head, and all those projects have MBE forms, and we send them over to her office once we go through our initial review, just verifying that, like I said, the documents are there and signed. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, this is Carla. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
Jeff, you indicate that there's sometimes a lot of proposals that are coming in. Carla, with you having to do the review, who on your team does that?
Where there's only 2 persons in my office that actually can review, because it's only a 3-person staff. So it's myself and/or Warren Squirewell. So we're the only 2 compliance officers for the county.
And how does that impact your workday? Sorry, never mind. That laugh tells us everything.
We do what we have to do. We do what we have to do to get it done.
Yeah. So could one of the recommendations for, even though I know we haven't really talked about, but we haven't talked about your department, but knowing how you are so intricately involved in these procurement processes, would it be helpful for you to have another staff person?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, from an outsider's perspective.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm doing this on purpose, so.
I work with Carla a good bit,
Wouldn't say that.
and yeah, she could use some help. She really could, and she's reviewing those MBE forms for consultants, but she's also looking at you know, the contractor's MBE goals, and then compliance is a whole nother animal. And
Right.
I we talk every week we meet, Carla and I and Rose, and we talk about that on very often, that I think on the compliance side is where Carla could really use some help too. But
No, I
maybe that's
appreciate
for
that,
the
Jeff.
commission to determine, but I think she would certainly appreciate that, and I think it would be helpful for you know, responses and things, you know, to be, you know, timely, and she does her best, and I give
Right.
Carla all the kudos I can give her, because she does an awesome job.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
just
And I
gonna,
really wanted that for the record, so I appreciate your input on that, Jeff. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
and I'm just gonna preview the end of the meeting, which is to say that the March meeting will be looking at all of our MBE, WBE, DBE issues. We will have a presentation on the disparity study that's been mentioned, and that will be a time for Carla and all of the work, many facets of it that she does, to be discussed, explored, and hopefully really inform the interim report of the commission. That is the March meeting for sure. We've got both our account, Stacey Rogers is scheduled, as well as the consultant that did the still internal but will be released disparity study.
Great.
So moving on to the technical review, and I apologize, the the style changed overnight. I sent this to Jasmine last night, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, wow, this doesn't match what I had. So anyway, we'll make that change. But anyway, so once we do the initial review, the MBE forms get sent to Carla. You know, and while Carla's group is reviewing those, we do what I'll call a technical review. And so what happens there is we have engineer. If it comes out of our bureau, then we have one of our engineers. You know, that's to say, if it's a sewer rehab contract, we would have one of our sewer engineers do the technical review. If it's in EPS, we send the packages to EPS for their technical review. Just a little tidbit: we do, property management does not do their reviews. The Bureau of Engineering does the reviews, the technical reviews for them. And we fortunately, we have a few folks that worked in public buildings years ago that are familiar with property management design and tasks. And just last month, that actually changed, and property management stole our person, and now they'll be working for property management. So it's good in a way that, you know, that she'll be able to review their proposals. So again, we review, the agency reviews the proposals and prepares a confidential report. And this report is again sort of templated in the fact that there's different sections in the report, and as you can in this slide here, there's a list of things that are in that report, and I don't need to read them and for the sake of time. So next slide, please. So in addition to the technical report, we also enclose a prior work chart. So the intent of that is to identify firms that have prior work with the county. So and this is used by the PSSC committee, and we go 2 years back from the submission date. In addition to that prior work chart, we also do a technical evaluation matrix. So it's basically a chart that has categories and points for different categories that we scoped out in the solicitation. So it may be you know, the ability to do environmental permitting. So if they, you know, in reading their proposals, they provide examples that they can do that, then, you know, it comes down to assigning points to that particular one, and you get a total score, and that's actually in this evaluation matrix along with rankings based upon the total score. Also in that evaluation matrix, there's we note the staffing numbers of the firm, and then also the staffing that's earmarked for the project. Once that whole package, which is the report, the evaluation matrix, and the prior work chart, it gets sent back to me for a final review, and then it's distributed to the Professional Services Selection Committee with a scheduled date.
Jeff, this is Peter. I have
Sure.
a question about the prior work
Yes, ma'am.
assessment. What is the average term of your contracts?
So I'll say you said average, so I'll say generally it's a 3+2, so it's a 3-year plus 2 one-year renewals.
So so that makes me think that maybe including prior work only going back 2 years is not really a complete picture.
That could be one of your suggestions.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next slide, please. So I mentioned PSSC. So this is a committee that was outlined and formed as part of that executive order that I mentioned back a few slides ago, and it's comprised of 3 county personnel and 3 private citizens. So the 3 county personnel are the Director of Public Works, who is the chairman of the committee, the Director of Budget and Finance or their assignee, and the Chief of the Bureau of Engineering and Construction. So those are the 3 county persons. And then there's also 3 private citizens that are appointed by the county executive. So currently, the committee is Andrea Walker, who is the acting Director of Public Works. I'm the acting, we have a lot of acting here, acting Bureau Chief of Engineering and Construction. And Rose Butler is the assignee from Budget and Finance. On the public side, as I said, there were 3 spots, 2 of which are filled at the moment. Tom Hamer, who is a retired deputy director here at Baltimore County, and Bob Berner, who's a retired bureau chief from Baltimore County as well. The 3rd person has left the committee. I have been talking with Sam O'Neill a few times about commissions because the 2 private citizens their commissions are expired. I believe they're a 3-year term. So, but I was told that they can continue to be part of the commission. So moving forward, the meetings are conducted similar, I guess, to this commission. Parliamentary procedures outlined in Robert's Rules of Order. Meeting minutes are taken, and then the subsequent meetings they're approved by the committee.
Dan here, can you send us just a couple of representative samples of the minutes in some future distribution, please? Thank you.
Sure. Let's see. And then, so in this meeting, there a lot of discussion ensues. So in the beginning of the meeting, generally the reviewing engineer will present some of their findings, and the committee has asked questions, and basically they have a discussion on which firms they feel are most qualified, and also realizing who has work and who doesn't. And a motion is brought to nominate a firm, and it's seconded, and that's basically how the firms are chosen. The executive order requires that at least 2 firms are selected, and there are times where we select where there's a lot of work that we need to get done. There may be 3 to 4 firms selected, and then we always do one alternate because there are times where firms may not perform as we may want, or we have more work than we anticipated, and by having that alternate, we don't have to go through the professional services process again. So we can immediately go to contract with that alternate and get it approved. Next slide, please.
I had a question in reference to the multiple companies. So based on the work, so how do you choose if company 1, company 2, just say you have 2 companies that do your infrastructure, roads or whatever, and when do you call on that second company?
So in the executive order, there's and also in the solicitation, there's a paragraph about intentions of work, and so we to the best of our ability, we rotate the work. There are times where there are certain firms that have maybe a specialty in a certain aspect that we're looking for, but we generally will rotate work as it is assigned to the 2 to 3 or 4 firms that are out there. Or we may just we have a backlog of projects and we just assign 1 to each firm.
So do you rotate where one company's doing a project and then the next project comes up, you then give it to the second company? Because it's my understanding that you have some contracts where the first company is getting all the work and the second company's been on the contract for 2 to 3 years and have never been called.
That is not what I understand. And is this for consulting or is this for contracting?
This is more for contracting.
Okay, because I'm talking about consulting at the moment. So, so we do the best that we try to actually spread the work as well, because we have upset limits for each contract. So, obviously if we use one contractor or one consultant, I'm sorry, for everything, that we're gonna run out of upset limit for that one, and it doesn't make much sense to do that versus just spreading the work around and sort of building up to the upset limit on all of them sort of equally. Let's see. Okay. Okay. So once we have selected our consultants, everyone is notified that submitted proposals. So, and obviously we let the ones know that were selected, and the selected firms are listed on the county's website under the specific projects that they were selected for. So once we have these consultants on board as selections, we ask the firm to draft a proposal, and as they do that, we're drafting a contract, and so that's sort of all sort of melded together. The contract is vetted through Office of Law. It's pretty much a standard template contract, which is also, there's a sample in the solicitation as well. The contract is signed by the consultant, Director of Public Works, Budget and Finance, and the county administrative officers. And then it also finally, since they're over $25,000, they go to council for approval. Next slide, please. So once it's approved by council, a master agreement is created, and the consultant is notified that the contract is approved and is fully executed. Once we get to this point, tasks, typically these are on-call consultant contracts, and tasks are assigned as needed.
Jeff, when you say that the consultant contracts are available on the county website, are you talking about under the master contract spreadsheet, or is there some other place?
There's a link to a sample contract. It's not the contract. It's just a sample contract. So the consultant knows sort of the format of the contract.
No, what I'm asking is, you said that the winners, the selected consultants, are listed on the website.
Correct.
And where is that on the website?
It's on I think it's under PSSC, or I think it's under projects to be assigned. But I can get that link for you.
Thank you.
We'll try to find it while you're talking, Jeff, and put it in the chat, and then we can also circulate it. We're going to do a recap email for this meeting because there's been so much already shared. So we'll send that out.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Sure.
If I could jump in to answer the question, I think, Ms. Peter, yes, they are in that master agreement link. Jeff is on purchasing, so there is a report that pulls all active master agreement as they are in Advantage, and then that report is located on the web page. So that's the one that you probably already have a link to.
Yeah. Thank you.
And that pretty much concludes my part of the presentation. If I think we'll take some questions at the end as well, but I'd like to turn it over to Karen at this point. Thanks, Karen.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. We're going to discuss the contractor pre-qualifications. Go to the next screen. Pre-qualification is required for a prime contractor bidding on a capital improvement project in excess of $25,000, or a contractor working on public infrastructure through a developer project, which is a UA or an RA project, and sometimes a subcontractor performing specialized or highly critical work on capital projects. A contractor must receive county approval of its pre-qualification application at least 10 county business days prior to the bid opening for the project. The Board of Education uses our pre-qualification list, and a contractor must be pre-qualified by the day of the bid opening for their projects. The pre-qualification packet, the rule for pre-qualification, and the list of pre-qualified contractors are on the county website. The pre-qualification application can either be mailed or emailed to our office, and the link is at the bottom of this slide. You can go to the next one. The prerequisites for pre-qualification is a contractor must provide 3 years of suitable project references for each category they are requesting. They must be able to obtain a bond. They must have a current state of Maryland contractor's business license, and they must be in good standings with the state of Maryland SDAT. Next one, please. Thank you. Pre-qualification categories include highway construction, traffic, grading, drainage channels, structures, curb and maintenance apartments, utilities, pumping stations, elevated water tanks, buildings, paintings, landscaping, environmental, parks, marine construction, and other specialty categories. Next screen. The pre-qualification committee is responsible for the suspensions and revocations for pre-qualification of all prime contractors. They include the director of DPW, or his authorized designee serves as the chairperson on the committee, the chief of DPW Design Division of Construction Contracts, and the chief of DPW, the Division of Construction Contracts Administration. The committee is also assisted by the Office of Law, Office of Budget and Finance, Minority Business Enterprise Officer, Property Management Division, and the chief of the Bureau of Engineering and Construction of DPW. Next screen. The contractor must submit the completed pre-qualification application, the contractor's bylaws identifying who is authorized to sign contract documents, a summary of work completed in the last 3 years of each category they request. They need to do the name of the location of the project, if they worked as a prime or subcontractor, summary of work completed, contract value of the job, the name of the owner of the project, the date project started and completed, the name and phone numbers of the owners, the representative, or the inspector. If the contractor is newly formed entity, the previous work performed and experience of its owners, officers, or principal employees will be considered. We also need the description of the financial condition and levels of staffing, the bonding company, the list of equipment, and the state of Maryland contractor's business license. Next slide. The pre-qualification review. When a pre-qualification application is received, the Division of Construction Contracts Administration verifies all of the information submitted by the contractor. Once it has been determined that the contractor has submitted all of the required documents, the contractor project list is reviewed. Depending on the categories the contractor is requesting, they are reviewed by either the Division of Construction Contracts Administration, the Bureau of Engineering and Construction, the Department of Environmental Protection and Sustainability, Solid Waste Management, or Property Management. The decision on the pre-qualification of a contractor is made within 30 days of receipt of all the documents. Once issued, pre-qualification certificate is valid for 3 years. Next screen. Now I'm going to talk about the contract bid process. The Division of Construction Contracts Administration, the DCCA, advertises solicitation for capital improvement construction projects over $25,000 for utilities, roads, structures, buildings, landfills, and stream restorations. Projects initiated by the Bureau of Engineering and Construction, Department of Environmental Protection and Sustainability, Solid Waste Management, and Property Management. Next screen. Our contract documents. DCCA receives the review and reviews the documents from the county agencies for completeness and accuracy. The documents are then prepared and compiled for a contract book. The book consists of 6 sections. It's information for bidders, the interim supplemental specifications, the special provisions, permits, the proposal, and this is submitted at the time of the bid, and the post-award documents, which are completed after the bidder has been awarded. Next screen. The contract advertisement. Advertisement of the project. It's on the county website along with the contract book and their drawings. That's the link. And the State of Maryland Maryland Marketplace. If an addendum is required for the project, it will be listed on the county website and will reference any changes in the project. Each bidder must include the signed addenda with their bid package. All bids are submitted to the county via the email. All bids are publicly opened and read through WebEx at the specified date and time listed on the contract book and on the county website. Next screen. Contract award. After the bid opening, all bid documents are reviewed to determine if the bids are responsive. MBE WB forms are sent to the Minority Business Enterprise Officer for approval. Once the lowest responsible and responsive bidder is determined, the project is awarded. The award letter and the allotment and the RQS, that's to secure the funds for the purchase order, are sent to the county for approval. And they go to the Department of Public Works, the acting director, the Office of Budget and Finance, the accounting section, and the Office of Budget and Finance Purchasing Services. The purchasing office will approve and sign the award letter, and the letter along with the MBEW subcontractor participation notice of intent to award, Form C subcontractor, is faxed to the contractor. Next slide. The contract execution. The contractor has 10 county business days from the approved award date to return their completed post-award documents to the Division of Construction Contracts Administration. The MBE-WEBE subcontractor participation notice of intent to award Form C subcontractor is a list of all non-MBE-WBE subcontractors being used, must be emailed to the Minority Business Enterprise Officer. The contractor returns 2 original post-award documents, and the documents are checked for completeness and accuracy. The post-award documents are sent for the county for execution. And they also go for the Department of Public Works, the acting director, the Office of Budget and Finance. The director will only sign for property management projects. The Office of Budget and Finance in the accounting, Office of Law, and the county administrative officer. After the post-award documents are executed, the contractor is mailed 1 document and one will be obtained in the office. Next screen. The county has a timeline for our projects. So advertisement of the project is usually posted on a Friday. If we have a pre-bid meeting is being held, there'll be 3 weeks before the bid opening. And the bid opening is 4 weeks from advertisement date for projects without a pre-bid meeting and 5 weeks from advertisement date for projects with a pre-bid meeting. Award of the project within the 90 days, calendar days from the bid opening, and 120 calendar days for bid openings for health, petition, or federal aid projects. And then the notice to proceed will be 90 days from award date. Next screen. Kind of ran through that really quick because trying to get done fast. Sorry. Any questions?
So I took a quick look at the pre-qualified firms in Baltimore County. There are approximately 400 firms that appear to be on the pre-qualified list. Do we know how many firms we're actually using today out of that 400? So on an annual basis, out of 400 firms, 50 on the list are actually doing business, or 100 or 400. Do we have any idea?
I'd have to look and see how many projects we currently have at the moment.
Okay. And do the subcontractors, so if I bid on, I'm pre-qualified, I bid, I'm awarded, do the subcontractors also have to be pre-qualified?
No, they do not, only if it's specified for certain type of projects. So if that company cannot do it, they have to get a pre-qualified person to do, let's say subcontractor. It'll be listed in the documents that a subcontractor would have to be pre-qualified in a certain area.
We typically will add, say if it's a water job in a state road, we'll do a pre-qualified paving contractor because it's in a state road. That's just an example.
All right. And so we know where those apply. And if there's a pre-qualification, do we take that into consideration as part of the minority business goal? Do those things overlap?
I don't think so, no.
We don't because we want to make sure that prime contractors, regardless of their minority status, would know about pre-qualification. So any contractor can apply for pre-qualification, even if they typically are subs. Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
It does, but it seems to me that might limit
can I explain?
Yes, sure.
The reason why we don't take the pre-qualification into consideration when we're setting the goals is, one, because a contractor, they may be participating as a sub of Baltimore County, but they may be participating as a prime somewhere else. So they could come to Baltimore County and apply for the pre-qualification and consider to be pre-qualified. So that keeps that open for them. The other thing is they have, I think, Karen, 10 days, right? 10 days up to the bid due date in order to apply or to get the recognition for the pre-qualification. So we don't know which contractors are able to meet that. And we don't know all of the areas that could be deemed subcontractable. So there are some hidden costs within costs that we can't see, but we know that there are firms that could provide it, not necessarily in the pre-qualification arena. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So
So-
we may have a lump sum, we may have a lump dollar amount for paving, but we know that there's milling, we know that there's it may be curb and gutter in that, which would not necessarily require pre-qualification. So we count that full cost.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
All right.
so also what was not covered, because it's not really part of the contract part of itself, but the MBE WBE goals are determined by on an individual basis, and is determined by the PRG group. We meet every Wednesday, and we have conversations about those, and it varies. I would say, I think on average, maybe it's about 20 to 25%, Carla, I would say. So there's some that we don't, where there's not really any goal, not on these types of projects, but some smaller projects, there were no goals, but we aim to, I would say like water and sewer contracts, which are a vast majority of the contracts that we put out in construction, are 25 to 30%.
Right.
On roads that are being funded using federal dollars, are we making our own determination? I would think we're going by the DE requirements. How do we handle that?
So on the road, Karen, you want me to?
Go ahead, yeah, you can
On
go
the
ahead.
road projects, State Highway actually tells Baltimore County Public Works what the goal is, and they provide the DBE forms. So the DBE forms go into the solicitations. The reporting goes back to State Highway. It doesn't come through us. It doesn't come through my office at all.
I wanted to piggyback.
Let me correct that last statement.
Let's say
Karen notifies our office that this project is a DBE project. So it does go out with our knowledge. So it's not that we don't know about it. We just don't set the goal. We just accept what the state gives us as the goal. And then when the DBE forms come in, we do a cursory review, but the state has the final say.
And Carla, based on that, you also would let the MBE/DBE community know on via your directory that this is an opportunity for those that are DBE certified in your database.
Yes. So that being said, for all procurements over $25,000, I actually try to direct solicit for every procurement that goes out of Baltimore County to the MBE, WBE, DBE, SBE firms that are located in Maryland. I try to notify them of the opportunities based off of their NAICS code. I go to the MDOT directory, and I do the direct soliciting on behalf of the county to those entities that could potentially perform as primes and or subs in those projects.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to go back on something that Scott had said early on about the number of vendors that are in your database, to actually get a list of those companies that, based on the number, who are getting these contracts in Baltimore County. One of the criticisms that I know members of MMCA have about doing business with Baltimore County, outside of it being difficult, particularly in the Department of Public Works and the professional services areas, is that, and I don't know if this is just a perception or it's really not just perception, that the county within the Department of Public Works and within certain the engineers and procurement, that there's this old boy network. And let's take solid waste. The contracts go back, and this might be incorrect. That's why, I'm asking the question, that you contract out the solid waste contracts, and that the companies that get these contracts are generational solid waste companies. And so anybody else who wants to pursue this, they probably just forget it because you're not going to get into that network. Same thing with roads and construction. I asked a question earlier, and I know that there's a company that is like second under the prime contractor. And I think the company's on this commission who has a contract, but that the second tier company has never been called in 3 years since they've been on the contract. So I mean, I'm asking a whole lot of stuff, but and then a lot of subcontractors and MBEs in particular, they get very frustrated, so they don't waste their time. So I'll be curious to see, what the databases of companies who actually get the business versus those companies that put in the bids that never hear back or get feedback on their contracts that they put in, what some of the challenges or the issues are.
The contracts that we put out are for the low responsive bidders. We only have one contractor on that bid. When it has multiple bidders, that would go through purchasing. So that's an on-call process. So we don't handle those projects in my office. So that would be handled with Rose and those.
And can I add a little bit to what Karen was just saying? So yeah, so our contracts are low bid, and as long as if you're ABC contractor and you're pre-qualified to do that type of work, you can bid on that contract. And if you're the low bidder, and you have all your forms and such together, you're gonna get the contract. So I just wanted to add that. And then as far as Ms. Dixon solid waste contracts, we don't handle those, and at least Karen doesn't handle those in her group.
And Jeff,
Who handles those?
Purchasing handles those. Any one-call projects are handled through those, or our system cannot do that.
And I know this is an ongoing challenge in government about the low bid contracts. Do you also track with the low bid contracts the number of change orders that happen? Because a lot of times low bid contracts end up exceeding who the mid or high contractor is who put in the bid for the change order. So do y'all track that to see ultimately what this contract is actually costing? And is it really the low bid?
And so, Ms. Dixon, to the question you just posed, that kind of goes back to our presentation with Workday, our current ERP system. We don't have that reporting capability to track, like the number. We would have to pull all of them and kind of like, piece all that information together, and that can take, several times to do that. So we don't have a robust system that will be able to just pull it all together for us. So that's that. And then in my presentation, if we can get time to get to, I can talk about the on-call contracting on the purchasing side of spectrums, and hopefully that may answer some of the questions.
And I'd like to make one comment about that as well. With the contracted community, some of the contracted community are not aware that Public Works isn't the only entity in the general government that does construction either. So there's a disconnect that I've been trying to dispel, that is only Public Works that does construction contracts. So there are construction related contracts that come out of the purchasing side that I just can't seem to convey it to the business community enough for them to understand that, and those contracts typically do not require pre-qualification. So if the commission can help with that area, that would be helpful. Because on the purchasing side, they're typically, unless they're working with electricity and water at the same time, it typically doesn't require pre-qualification construction projects coming out of purchasing.
Hey, Karen and Jeff, this is Rick Benetti. Back to sort of the state being involved and tracking the MBE. On federal and state funded road, water, and sewer work that is subject to prevailing wage, how does the county track the prevailing wage, or do they leave that to make sure that those payrolls to the employees of the contractors are certified and meeting the prevailing wage requirement based on state law and federal law? Does the state do that, or is there any involvement with the county there?
We do get copies of the certified payroll. That's someone overlooks that. I don't know who keeps all the tracking part of it. I don't get involved in that.
Does
I
the county do
just-
that or the state?
The state probably gets more involved in that.
So the county doesn't really have any way to confirm that on a state-funded road projects or sewer or water project that the prevailing wage is being met.
We have the certified payrolls in our office that is reviewed, but I don't know how it is. I would have to ask someone how that is looked. Do you know how that is done, Jeff? Not sure if you.
I'd have to surmise. I'd have to ask. So the only, well, until recently, where the prevailing wages are going to impact, that are going to be required on all jobs. The only jobs that I'm aware of that we had prevailing wages were the federally funded bridges, and I feel like that is tracked by the state.
Well, yeah, so I'd be interested to know and to figure out how you guys coordinate that, because if you have a county project that's using county construction project that's using 50% state funds, that would be subject to the state prevailing wage law. So I'd be interested to see how you guys coordinate with the state to track that stuff.
I'd like to comment a little bit on that as well. I'm sorry, this is Carla. For those of you who don't know, the county has a compliance software that we use for tracking contract compliance. Again, compliance is an issue because of staffing, but we're looking to expand that software to where prevailing wage would be tracked through that electronic tool in the future. It's not there yet, but we are looking at that because of the county's legislation as well.
Okay, thank you.
Will that tool then be integrated with Workday, or will Workday be implemented so that tool is no longer required?
I may have to defer to Rob O'Connor on that. I don't believe it's going to be a full integration. It's going to be let me explain the way it works right now with the contracts. I actually extract reports out of Advantage, out of the current financial system, and then I personally upload that data into the contract data into Prism so that we can track compliance. So that's a manual interface. I'm the manual interface for that. So there was discussion to see if we could automate that interface for the contracting data. So my assumption, Rob, I'm making an assumption that if we move to that would actually be an automated process to bring the contract data over. And then the contractors would then be reporting in Prism as they do the MBE reporting, that they would also be reporting their prevailing wage requirements in there as well. That's tied to the specific contract at hand that has that requirement.
And I'm going to jump in here, just being cognizant of time, and obviously the great discussion. Rose does have additional presentation that may answer some of these additional questions that you all may have. So I propose that we jump to that. And if there's any other additional unanswered questions, that you all email me, and then I can collect them from DPW and the crew, similar to the attachment I provided on the meeting invite where we've been cataloging them. So if everyone's okay with that, we'll jump just to get to Rose's presentation, and then I will spearhead getting the rest of those questions that you all have about this extensive process captured.
I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
And Rose, I gave you presenter privileges. There you go.
I am ready, Jasmine. So my portion of it is going to talk about the on-call contracting on through my office, non-competitive procurements and procurement cards. Before I get started, I just want you to know I only have about 12 slides to kind of talk about all of this. But I also want to disclose that everything that I have here can be found in section 13, 17, and 18 of the purchasing manual, just if you want to use that as a reference, later on in your time. So we're going to go through master agreements because I need to touch on that, because that kind of it kind of, you know, combines the on-call contract administration, non-procurement, non-competitive procurements, and procurement cards. So in general, I wanted just to bring a connection to master agreements versus on-call contracts. So master agreements are actually generated from on-call contracts. And to say is we put the solicitation out for on-call contracts, and then once it's approved, then a master agreement is generated in our ERP system. That's what Karen and Jeff was referencing in their presentation. Both the master agreement and on-calls are established for the purpose of repetitive commodities and or services. You know, allowing us to take advantage of, you know, fixed price discounts and things of that nature, making it easier for us to kind of go to resources that we know are readily available to address our needs, you know, at any time we need it. On-call contracts, master agreements can apply to any type of commodity and or services, but where on-call contracts come into place is they actually focus on repetitive services. So I gave you a couple of those services where we have active, you know, on-call contracts, and professional services, which is something that Jeff had already mentioned in his. But then on my end, professional services, you know, can be, you know, accounting firms, dentistry, you know, things of that nature, maintenance services, and any type of services that we need for the upkeep of the county buildings. On-call contracts, just like most of our contracts, are issued on a 1-year base term with, you know, up to 4-year one renewal options. On-call contracts, how do we procure them? Mostly they go through a request for bid unless they're, you know, some sort of complex scope of services, and we have to go through the request for proposal process. In some cases, if the scope of services aligns with one of the categories that is listed on the DPW pre-qualification list, there may be a pre-qualification process involved with that. So when we get the awards, or when we get the proposals back, my buyers, what they do is they reach out to DPW and just confirm that that vendor, you know, has been pre-qualified in that, you know, category. But where it kind of differs is on my on-call contracts, it may, you know, come from, for example, you know, property management. So we work with the department, they let us know whether, you know, this specific scope of services requires a pre-qualification, you know, language in the solicitation. So number of contracts. So we approximately have over 1,200 active master agreements, and that's that list that we were talking about early, Ms. Peter, that's on the website. But within that 1,200, we do have over 150 on-call contracts. And again, you know, just some more examples is that we, you know, janitorial services, you know, plumbing, office supplies, you know, all of those can be considered on-call contracts. So I just wanted to let you know that it's not just service specific. I mean, it could be service specific, but then it could be commodity as well. Hopefully that's making sense. Contract administration, which is definitely a key point when we are talking about the on-call contracts that focus on services. That begins with, you know, after the award of contract, and it's just to make sure that the contractor and the county, you know, are on the same page, making sure that the terms and conditions and the specifications or scope of services are being adhered to, and the agency actually designates, most departments have a designated person that handles the contract administrating part on their end, but they work with the buyers and just bring us in the loop when there are any issues. Non-competitive procurement methods, you know, the ones that we mostly use here is emergency sole source, 902F, nothing, you know, different than any other jurisdiction. And, you know, emergencies are just what they are, you know, something that is going to relate to the health, safety and protection of, property or people. Sole source, again, just one supplier. And the 902F just means that there is a product or service that's very unique. Something about it is unique, a feature, a function that will serve in the best interest of the county. And so I want to kind of talk about how we process those non-competitive procurements that I just mentioned in the previous slide. So the Office of Law and Purchasing, we've developed, I want to say back in 2016, 17, I know Susan's on the line if I remember, I think around about that time. We had developed a template specifically for each of those non-competitive procurements I just mentioned. And the reason we did that is prior to that, we were receiving memos from departments, and those memos, some of the times they were not answering the questions. It didn't make sense. But just to make sure that everyone was on the same page and we were getting what we needed, we developed these justification templates that had some of the questions. These are not all, but some of these questions on the template, just to make sure that at the very minimum, we made sure that they were giving us what we need. So they have to identify those features and functions that they deem are unique or proprietary. They have to let us know why this is in the best interest for the county to purchase from this vendor. Let us know what happens if we just can't do it, and is this a direct threat to the public life, health, and safety? And, most importantly, we ask our departments to, provide us with, their, review of the price and make sure that it's fair and reasonable, because we know just because something is sole source or, 902F or an emergency, we still have an obligation to make sure that we are, the price that we are receiving from the vendor is fair and reasonable. And we're just not agreeing to just pay anything. Once that justification is submitted from the department to purchasing, the Office of Law and Purchasing, we mostly, Susan Dubin and myself, we review these justifications and make sure that they are compliant. If they're not compliant, we go back to the department and say, hey, this is not going to fly. This is going to have to go out for solicitation. However, if the justification is there, we move that on to the Director of Budget and Finance for his review and approval. He sends it back to us, and then we'll go through the contracting process. But even in that process, we still, make sure that we take advantage of the opportunity to negotiate. So we also go back with the Office of Law and look at the terms and conditions and see if there's any, way to make the deal, more beneficial for the county. And then,
let me just ask a question.
Sure.
Because the monthly report of emergency procurements is one of the items on the council meeting agenda. And of course, COVID has made a difference, but that every 2-week report adds up to a lot of money. The last one was almost $5 million in emergency procurements, of which there were 22 awards. So if I'm a farmer that produces dairy in a county, and I see that one farm received an emergency contract for $800,000, is that because that dairy farmer is on the master contract list? Or if I'm not on the list, is there a way for me to get part of that dairy work?
So most of our emergency procurements or contracts specific to COVID, majority of them are not pulling from our master agreement list. These are, we're pulling from, other resources or other jurisdictions using them. In this specific case, they can actually just send an email. We do have a running list of emails that we receive from vendors. And I must say, it is an extensive list, of vendors who reach out to us and say, hey, we can provide, this. So we really do our best to capture all that. When we do have a, a need, most of the time, there's just several different factors that, plays into who we award to. It depends on the demand, how much of we need, because they may not be able to meet the quantity, or they may not be able to meet the time frame. But we do our best to try to, spread the wealth. In some cases, I've, looked on the Department of the state of Maryland, contracts to see if I can pull some of those vendors in. So in this pandemic, we do our best to try to be as competitive as possible. But I would say most of them we are not pulling from, master agreements. Some of them, but most of them are, just coming from all walks of life, to be honest.
Thank you for that, Rose. I see that our time is expiring and some people have already had to leave the meeting. I'm not sure what to suggest about the rest of the agenda or any other business items.
Some of the agenda was some housekeeping items and probably, as I said earlier, didn't need the full 20 minutes. I think some of this conversation and what Rose was going to present, we are going to want to share and can discuss at a future meeting. I think
Good.
In conversations with Phil, I think it might have been the last meeting, we talked about whether we needed to add any time. And we don't have, he had not made a final recommendation on that, but some of these topics that we touched on today, we know that we're going to do a lot in March. I don't know the date for much of the MBE, WBE, DBE topic, but now we're in another realm that really deserves more attention. So I think what we should do is wrap up on schedule, share all the PowerPoints, but note that this one we have not finished discussing. And I also think personally, knowing the COVID emergency and how procurements had to be done, especially almost 1 year ago, it was a whole different world. And that goes to your question, Peter.
Yeah, I understand.
The other thing, so I think we should wrap. I think we'll go back to Phil, see about slotting in another meeting, maybe later in March or early April. I do think, please, commissioners, take Jasmine up on the suggestion to email her with any lingering questions from today's conversation. We are tracking all questions, whether they're related to a meeting or in general, in a spreadsheet. Some of them are getting addressed in the presentations. I hope some people have recognized that. Others, we will just provide written responses. I also think you should share with Phil your ideas for things that should be captured in the report. I heard a few things today along those lines, and I really appreciate the thought in each meeting. And then finally, in addition to flagging the very in-depth presentation we'll have at the March meeting, the county is launching, once a contract is approved by council, we expect to be launching what we're calling an operational efficiency audit of all county functions and departments, and it will include the procurement system. And it should be very valuable to the commission in the coming months. I don't think there'll be anything to share before the summer, but it'll certainly be timely for the work of this group. So I just wanted to flag that and can share more at a future meeting after council hopefully approves the contract next week.
Thank you.
Before, one second, please. Before we go, I want to thank Peter for.
Oh, hi, Phil.
Hi there, for covering. I really do appreciate it and apologize that my court schedule interfered. I do think that we will need to have some extra meetings, and Elizabeth, Jasmine, and I will confer promptly and get another one on there. I'm sorry, Dan, I think I interrupted you. I just want to be sure I had a chance to.
I think we have extra meetings, and I think some of the issues, these housekeeping things are not trivial at the end, and I've been bringing some of them up since the beginning, and I'll just be blunt here for a moment. I brought up the purchase of health insurance as a group, as a piggyback issue at our very first meeting, and even before. And yet the line item says, after 3 months of bringing this up, will be referred to the Office of Law. I mean, I think we need a little more substantive response to that. The issue of sustainability was brought up at the very first meeting by, I think, the county. Here we are at the third or fourth meeting. That topic has not yet been addressed, and there's certainly state policy on that and a number of other things. So I don't want to trivialize those things. They're always at the end, and the presentations are excellent and informative. But there needs to be some time to have the members just discuss things. And one thing I'll ask Phil, I'll send it an email, is just to have a meeting of just the members of the commission without county staff, so that we can share a little bit more and get to know each other.
Dan, I think I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I can tell you that the sustainability issue and the piggyback purchasing issue, those are all to come. And what I want us to do is gather as much information as we can, but not get too far down the road before we do exactly what you're saying, Dan, which is to have the commission sit down and talk these things through, just as the commission. And also another suggestion you made, Dan, which I think is a good one, is looking at having some committees or subcommittees look at particular issues of commissioners and come back and report, because there's an awful lot on our plate. And but it's clear to me that once a month is just not going to be enough, and we'll need to do more. So we hear you. I promise you none of this is being ignored. We're trying to get people scheduled and get things lined up in a way that will make sense and be helpful. But please keep the suggestions coming. And there's no, and I'm with you. This is a problem when we have a limited amount of time. The things at the end of the meeting are often the most important, and the commissioner interaction is extremely important. So we will work on it. Life is much better if we could all be in the same room together, but we'll have to make this work for the time being. But thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
And if I may, just before we clear up, Jasmine, I'm going to send you the updated PowerPoint, but I don't know whether anyone from the panel want to just, take a look at it and, just, I guess, through Jasmine, let me know if there are specific things that you would like for me to discuss at whatever future meeting we have. I'm more than, happy to do so.
Thank you. All right, are we ready? Acting Chair, are we ready to adjourn?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Nice to see you.
Thanks,
We'll be in touch
everyone.
very soon.
Appreciate it.
Take good care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye.